All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next topic for discussion is going to be around leveraging digital public infrastructure for advancing financial inclusions. Without wasting much time, I'm going to call on stage our moderator for this session. Please welcome Ms. Swati Chowdhary, Director, Network and Development, Women's World Bank. Can we please have a huge round of applause for her? Joining her on stage, we've got our speakers. Let me introduce all of them one by one. And once I'm done, I would want all of them to then come on stage. We've got amongst the speaker, Ms. Priyanka Jain, Head of Policy and Legal, Fide Money. Mr. Sujith Nair, CEO and co-founder of Fide, team behind Beacon Protocol, that's behind ONDC. We've also got on the panel Mr. Shiva RV, Deputy Chief of Technology and Infrastructure, NPCI, Dr. Pawan Bakhshi, India Country Lead, Financial Services for the Poor, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And lastly, I would like to call on stage Shri Sumnesh Joshi, Deputy Director General, Joint Secretary level, Ministry of Communications and IT, Government of India. Can we please have a huge round of applause for our speakers? I would now like to leave the stage and mic to our esteemed speakers.
Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. And what we're trying to do today is attempting to explore our common digital future, which is based on affordable, accessible, and inclusive digital public infrastructure, DPI as they're commonly called. It's a theme for India's, introduced by India for the G20 presidency, but we were talking how well or not so well are they understood. So in our panel today, what we seek to do is to go deeper, saying how can we leverage our DPIs in service of financial inclusion. So I'm Swati. I'm really thrilled to be hosting this session. We have these really 5 accomplished panelists, and what's great about this is that all of them have been on the forefront of creating, of delivering, of refining DPIs as we know it. So let's make most of the limited time. And what I would love is to quickly hear from you, or what would you like to learn from the panel? So quickly in a word or two. I know we usually have the question answers later, but let's try and change that a little bit. So anybody, what would you like to learn so that we can weave that into the narrative? I mean, I'm hoping that all of you have come, you would love to learn about something, right? So, anything at all? Okay, sounds good.
Hi, this is Sachin from KL. I think financial inclusion is being talked more from banking and payments, right? I would love to see where to add insurance in this mix from a risk planning perspective, and especially fintech platforms like Meta, etc.
Sounds good. So resilient products. Anybody else? Going once? Oh, perfect. Sounds good. Perfect. So with that, thank you. Thank you for your suggestions. Now, a good way. I tried to wrestle with how do we structure this discussion. And I thought good way of doing this would be to really map out the journey of the TPIs, which is basically India's digital transformation journey and how it enabled financial inclusion and the tremendous scope that it has. So to start with, what really are DPIs? And the key thing in DPI is basically the word infrastructure. So we try to figure out analogies. Though Sujith did like a wonderful job, so I'm going to leave that to him. But to get us started, I liked how I like the way that Gates Foundation had defined it as roads. A network which was essential for people to connect with each other, access a huge range of goods and services, and therein we also had roadblocks when people did not have access to these goods and services. So this basically then limited inclusion, impacting a lot of segments such as low-income women, low-income segment as well as women, restricting the choice of goods and services. So with that, let me start the panel. And to give you some context, back in 2008, we were considered one of the world's most unbanked population. To now, we've basically leapfrogged the traditional development processes owing to the DPIs and our famous JAM or Jan Dhan Aadhaar and Mobile Trinity. One of the most striking statistics that I've come across is what BIS said, that what India did for financial inclusion in 9 years would have traditionally taken 47 years by traditional means. So with that, we'll start with Mr. Joshi. Mr. Joshi, India is making these irreversible, non-linear changes. Each changes acts as an input to the next. And Aadhaar was basically able to unlock access to bank accounts. And through that, this gamut of financial services. How do you think the ecosystem has benefited in context of financial inclusion? And have we harnessed its full potential?
Yeah. So thank you, Swati. And first of all, I would like to thank Global Fintech Festival organizers for having me here to share my thoughts. See, the United Nations has set a Sustainable Development Goal 16.1 to provide a legal identity by 2030 across the world. But I am saying it proudly that India is the first country using the Aadhaar. We have given this legal identity already to everyone. We have already completed the work. So this is the great thing that India has achieved, providing a digital identity which is verifiable online, anytime, everywhere, and offline also. Now, when we develop any product or when we are launching any product, we require the ecosystem should be ready. See, in 2008, way back, state-owned telecom company BSNL has launched the IPTV in 2008. No content, no connectivity, no speed. Product failed. So ecosystem is required. See, UPI is doing a wonder, 1 billion transactions in a month. But had it been launched in before 2014, same success? No. Because that time, bank accounts were not there. Only 58% of the country residents having the bank account. But in 2014, Honorable Prime Minister of India has launched a scheme as PMJDY, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. Under that, using this digital identity Aadhaar, 500 million bank accounts have been opened. And which bank accounts? It's all street vendors, hawkers, laborers, workers. See the lower strata. So today, the vegetable hawker is taking the 10 rupees payment using the API because now it's financially, it is included in the system and it is contributing in the digital economy. And again, the advantage is because we have bring this person using the financial inclusion tool. Now the cash flow lending is also on the cards. That maybe someone will discuss in detail. So the point is the ecosystem should be ready. So for the financial inclusion for the fintech companies in India, the ecosystem is ready. In last 9 to 10 years, lots of things have been changed. The internet customers, 250 million to now 850 millions. Now smart, so because we got the connectivity, right, internet. Now how to access the last mile? We require the devices, smartphones. So now in last 9 to 10 years, 270 plus companies are manufacturing mobiles here in India. The cost of the mobile phone is the $70, that's it. So we have empowered the last mile, the smart device, and the connectivity, and of course the KYC is required in fintech, so digital identity Aadhaar is giving. So all these three things are in place, and then other DPIs, because in our country, many languages, right? So we require, because when you are giving the credit and the agreement has to be signed, and one cannot read the English, the agreement in English, they have to read in the Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, Gujarati. So now Bhashini, again the DPI. So one can use that DPI also to for the language translation purpose. Now account aggregator. So many DPIs have come. And UPI of course is there. So all and then open credit enable network is also there for the cash flow lending. So using all these other DPIs along with the digital identity, now ecosystem, what I can say, is ready to adopt any fintech product. And the moment we say financial inclusion, I think the gentleman rightly pointed out that it's not only the banking transaction. We have to go the micro credit, micro insurance, or why a person earning 20,000 rupees, 30,000 rupees is not able to invest in the mutual fund. and can earn 15%, 20%. But initially, the cost of acquisition was very high, $25. Now it's $1. And as far as the Aadhaar is concerned, they are charging only rupees 3 per transaction. It's a very, reduced cost. So the cost is reduced. Now again, the data cost, right? Earlier it was huge. Now the cost of the data is less in our country. So what I can say, this ecosystem we have to use and innovate using the GEM Trinity. Jandan, that is the bank account. So 1.4 billion bank account and 850 million unique bank account for which we are transferring the benefit using the Aadhaar. That is there. And then, of course, Aadhaar is there and mobiles are also there. So this is what I want to say in sum and substance, that the ecosystem ready, please innovate and give the products.
Thank you, Mr. Joshi. And actually, the two things that you touched upon, the fact that the price of data fell, you have increasing number of phone ownership, within that smartphone ownership. So that brings me to you, Priyanka. In terms of, if you look at access to information, this has really played an overall role. And how do we leverage this piece to really turbocharge financial inclusion? How it's actually happened? When we spoke last time, you spoke about WhatsApp communities and spoke about a couple of great stories from the ground. I'd love for you to share.
Thanks, Swati. Hello, everyone. First of all, a disclaimer. I have recently transitioned out of WhatsApp, and I am transitioning into FiMoney as their lead for policy and legal. Thus, all views are personal. I don't want either of the employees to take vicarious liability so soon.
Considering you're a legal person.
Yes. Coming to what Swati was mentioning and what even Sumnesh referred to, the digital pathways, the railways, the roadways are ready. We have a great infrastructure which is poised for even further growth, and the fintech economy and the fintech innovation is doing full justice to where we are today. And we've just begun, right? This decade is belonging to India, and this century might also belong to India. So I'm extremely excited about and bullish about what we can deliver as a country and how we can create templates for the world. You spoke about access. Actually, I want to call out, and I refer to Pramod's presentation at the G20 DPI event, wherein he spoke about access along with choice, equity, and innovation. And I think these together are very powerful ways of looking at it, because it's not just opening access and democratizing, whether it's identity data, payments, transactions, or the way we bank and conduct financial transactions, but actually giving people the equity and choice. And as you rightly said, when we were at WhatsApp innovating, keeping the consumer in the heart of everything, we thought about the reason why these pathways and the infrastructure is important is to connect, communicate, collaborate. And that's all about communication in some form. So voice, video, audio was critical. And we try to leverage that technology for a country as diverse as India to break the barriers of literacy and communicate with everybody at ease, even the last mile, because everybody from first mile to a last mile actually wakes up to the same WhatsApp interface. And how could we do more with what India has already done using WhatsApp? So leveraging digital inclusion in that form. Then building the next layer of financial inclusion, thus bringing banking and financial services on WhatsApp to the consumers so that they don't have to visit the bank branch or an insurance company's branch, but bring the product to the consumer. So the reverse cycle. And I think it helped because we saw great traction. And today, if you all see, the floodgates have been opened, banking, insurance services are available on WhatsApp, and that's the way access was in a way democratized. I also want to refer to how apart from just the digital payments, the digital public infrastructure, the overall innovation that is happening in the fintech space, whether it is on the UPI channels and what the public-private partnership that we see when the public infrastructure was created, but private partners such as the third-party apps actually took payments to where it is today, whether it's Google Pay, Phone Pay, WhatsApp Pay. I hope to see it even further penetrate in the markets. But yeah, I think all of them together is what we need for a country of our size and diversity. So we need all hands at the deck and at play with a public-private partnership model.
Thank you. And one piece that you spoke about, Priyanka, it's like, we know women process information differently. They have different access. Yes. I would say not so process, but in terms of access to information is always limited, and therefore, traditionally, they've been left out of the loop. So I think this is hugely helpful. And with that, from access to information, Shiva, I'll move on to you, because it's about access to digital, or access to financial services overall. So our ability to digitally transact has been fueled by DPIs. What we've seen in 6 years is from predominantly using cash to look at the volume of digital transactions that we have here. Now, let's talk about whether it's truly inclusive, and how can we make access available to everybody without any unintended exclusion. And I'm referring to the smartphone ownership gap here.
Sure, thanks. Good morning, everyone. Well, I'll start this way. I think, sir here, Joshi sir, right? So he did actually put up a nice start there. Let's try to understand our country. Our country is actually developing at a very rapid pace, but at the same time, if we look at the footprint, that's also pretty high in terms of let it be the population or let it be the transactions. And on that note, the first thing that I'd like to do is to thank the ecosystem who made UPI such a successful platform, I'll say. It started as a service, or I'll say it was invented as a protocol, then was started as a service. Thanks to the ecosystem, thanks to the players, thanks to the partners, the PSPs, the banks, and of course, none other than the people who adopted it with open arms, and we are seeing this success today. I think the footprint is right. We have clocked 10 billion transactions a month. I think we'll soon see 1 billion a day transactions, which was our goal that we set a couple of years back. We are racing, and I think we are racing a little faster too. But the question is, while we are seeing the numbers coming in, and we are seeing that the adoption is pretty good, are we able to cover every sector in the country is a big question that always kind of bites us. And when I'm saying every sector, let's try to understand the geography itself. India has good amount of metropolitan cities, and if we look at the digitally literate population, they are more of concentrated around these metropolitan cities. But is India that all? Not exactly, right? So we have a vast spread of geography, and thanks to the telcos, they've really done a splendid job. I mean, looking at the way the connectivity used to be 10, 12 years back and where we stand today, I think leaps and bounds, hands down, that's a commendable job, thanks to the telcos who brought connectivity to the last mile. But at the same time, we do have situations where people are still not digitally literate because we are still a developing country. The education rate, the poverty line, all of these do count. So it's not about, when we create platforms, especially when we're calling it as DPIs, I think the first thing what we have to also think is, how do we put this technology, or say, how do we enable people? We shouldn't be waiting for people to come to us. Rather, we are always thinking on the lines of how can we put this piece of infrastructure, or rather I'll say platform or service, in their hands, which can make their life easy. And obviously the inclusivity will be a lot better than what we are today. If I were to probably end the statement, I'll only say, we have done a good job, but it's not good enough, looking at the footprint of our country. But I'll again, as our MD said, we should wait for a couple of hours more. Probably the answers will come in the form of a couple of announcements out there. Thanks. Thanks.
Thanks, Shiva. We're looking forward to that. Now, when I keep talking of unintended inclusion, I obviously refer to women. I was just waiting for for it to be brought up. But Pawan, I mean, both our organizations strongly believe that when you design for women, you design for everybody. But the converse is never really true. So for me, the obvious step in the journey is obviously from access to to really use it. And you've been there, you've seen a lot of it. So we've made these huge strides in terms of access and tentative steps in terms of increasing usage. What are the barriers we really need to solve for? What does it really mean for this woman in a small hamlet in Bihar?
Yeah. Thanks, Swati. I think it's a great question. So one is that we needed to know that the technology works and the platforms work and stuff like that, I think, which is now been proven beyond any doubt. The key is that we didn't design it for everyone. So actually, we went and designed it for everyone, and we thought that men and women would use it in the same way, but we realized it's not the same. So we have to look back and say what could be done in a different way. I think there are challenges which we've seen, which is both around confidence with technology, access to technology, a lot of trust in the ecosystem, issues around customer protection. Will I lose all my money if I transact? Increasing amount of scams and frauds which are perpetuating, almost every day. So there are challenges there, and they need to be addressed. But I think more than that, it's about the value propositions, right? So if you look at the benefits of what the technologies or the platforms, the DPIs as we talk about it, have gone and delivered in the grounds, there is at one level individuals who've seen improvement in the way transactions are done, efficiency of transactions, the cost of transactions, and they're able to do stuff in a way which they weren't able to in the past. Then you've seen this impact on the ecosystem where the businesses or the private sector or the commercial kind of sector has seen impact in terms of business models which have emerged and efficiencies and everything else around it, innovations which have happened. And the third is the government and the social sector, which we're seeing that there is an impact there as well. It's because of using technology and everything else that now they're able to do more with the same amount of funding and be able to reach the last mile. So I think overall, we've seen impact on all three, but we've not yet gone and done a significant impact understanding of what does it mean if women had access. Well, we know that when women receive money, they're able to improve the lives of their families. More kids go to school, more food on the table, the right kind of decisions which are excellent for the household. And if the household improves, there is an impact on the community and in the village and the ecosystem in general. But we've not done enough there, I think, but there is progress, because if you see what the government is trying to do in terms of the LPG gas in the hands of women, more DBT in the hands of women, there are whole loads of efforts which have been done to look at that. That comes from those insights that it is there. But in terms of technology, one of the basic things which probably may need to get solved to be able to move this is providing them with a handset. If they don't have a handset, they're unlikely to do a transaction on themselves. And then you're saying, and then the answer could be, is it in the assisted mode? Can they or will they need to go somewhere and do the transaction? And if they are going to go somewhere, then is that mobility even possible? And what does it take for a woman in a rural area to travel a little bit of a distance on her own or with somebody else to do a transaction there and therefore. So I think we're moving in the right direction. That there is action which is happening because a whole load of folks, including the regulators and the fintechs and everybody is trying to solve for the last mile to be able to reach out to them. One of the good things which you spoke about, the access in the beginning and the way you defined access, and I'm sorry, Sachin, it's about accounts. India has no gender gap in accounts. Men and women have the same number of accounts. 80% of adults in the country today have a bank account. Now that's an unheard of thing around around the rest of the world. Now there is a difference in usage of men and women, but women usage is increasing, although slowly, but it's increasing. I think what everybody else, and I go back to your thought about the role of the ecosystem, that what the role of the ecosystem is doing is taking it to the last mile, ensuring that there is a value proposition there, ensuring that that there are people there who are looking at at what are the needs of these excluded kind of population, and which is both in terms of geography and gender. I think one thing which I'd love to highlight here, before I stop, is that we still talk about the gap of gender without actually having a lot of data. So we have a room full of fintechs here. What I'd urge you to do is, when you report your data, when you look at your own data as well, and when it's published out there, talk about the gender disaggregated data. Don't talk about consumers as a whole. Split them up. You'll get insights into what you should be doing to move the needle on the gender kind of front, because we can't move the needle. It's you guys here who have to do that job, right? So I think to underline the fact that gender disaggregated data is really important, because unless it's measured, you'll not be able to see change in that, how much ever anybody else goes and pushes. Yeah. Thanks, Swati.
Thank you. Actually, what I've heard now is like 3 really big points, because you spoke about gender disaggregated data. Shiva, you spoke about making the technology really work for them, and Mr. Joshi, you touched upon how the customer centricity of it all. And to do that at scale, Sujith, that neatly brings me to you, is that when we spoke about last year, we spoke about the difference about this scaling up and building for scale, and especially when we're looking at population scale APIs. And that's a phrase I think I've heard many, many times in the last 1.5 days. So as we're looking at India's DPI, and Priyanka, you said of combining the best of public and private provision, how do you leverage that to create, so A, what's the difference according to you, and how do you leverage it to create more inclusive access?
Sure. No, great question, Swati. Thank you. And fantastic insights coming from all the other panelists. When you talk about scale and population scale, I think it's important, at least in the digital world and how we have been building things in the digital economy, there is a need for a shift in the way of thinking, which is the point I think you alluded to, which is normally as tech in fintech or whichever tech we are in, we kind of pick up a product management fit and we scale whatever works, right? We scale what works. But interestingly, what India has been showing in this decade that we all talk about is that India has successfully managed to shift that way of thinking from scaling what works to actually thinking what works at scale. Now, it's important to understand why this shift, one, seems to be working, and why is it even necessary. One, because scale brings its own set of complexities, which you don't figure out when you're not building anything for scale initially. Scale brings complexity, scale brings huge amount of diversity. To the point that if you want to think of a payment protocol like UPI, if I had to just take an example and apply scale what works, we are talking about having 60 million POS machines across India to deliver electronic payments. Now that's not going to happen, because we're talking about SMEs, small businesses, taxi drivers, tender coconut water sellers. They're not going to pay a rental for an acquiring machine and pay fees on top of it. So we need to flip the question and saying, what does work at scale? Now that's a very orthogonal, different mindset that comes from this new paradigm, when suddenly India is doing 10 billion transactions, large of them is person to merchant, because there are 60 million QR codes. QR codes, and believing in this fact that at population there's one technology that everybody is carrying, which is mobile phones, right? We do have 800 million smartphones, to your point on feature phones, maybe I'll come to that in a bit. But this necessary shift in the way of thinking, and this is something that I think somewhere in the first 2 cycles of internet, which is building internet itself and then building scalable businesses on internet, we probably realized that this whole complexity and diversity that comes with population scale requires this new shift. So if you look at Aadhaar, Mr. Joshi eloquently presented that. Who would have thought that solving a financial inclusion problem in the country needs to start with giving an unrelated, independent, almost disinterested ID as a building block? I'm sure all of us were around when Aadhaar program was announced. We couldn't connect the dot saying that having a digital ID is actually a financial inclusion solution. Then we built one layer on top of it saying, okay, if you have this data, can we now think of eKYC? Who would have thought that the biggest telecom operator today would use that to go from 0 to, I don't know, 160 million in 6 to 8 months because it's all for one thing. Now, this is what we mean by shifting from scaling what works, which is building the same thing again and again and assuming that my 25 million customers that I can get is going to be the same that I'll find in every other of the rest of the 500 million customers. That's not going to happen. Language, diversity, geographical disparity, income disparity, all of that put together makes us shift this thinking. And this idea about what works at scale has made us think in digital world, something that we've been doing in the non-digital, the brick and mortar economy. Now, I'll just give you a few examples. I mean, Swati, I think you did cue me in on saying maybe this is a good way to explain DPI. So, imagine if you were to build hospitals and school in a town, would you build an exclusive road only for the hospital? Only for the road, only for the shop? No, you'll use a common set of roads as infrastructure to access all of them. Tomorrow, if Ferrari wants to sell more cars in Bombay, I don't think Ferrari is saying, I'm going to launch a designer road for you. Right? So we use common infrastructure. It's because of the infrastructure we can have bicycles to bullock carts to Ferrari, all sort of solutions coming. So what the play there as a pattern, we probably don't see the pattern because we live in that world, in the real world. But when we take that to the digital world, what we are saying is, if you want to build for scale, build that works at scale, you got to shift your mindset from this solution thinking, doing everything myself, to infrastructure thinking. And if you build infrastructure as a solution, which is common roads or rails as we're talking about, surprisingly, 200 years ago, rails were not public. They were not infrastructure. They were private technology. But we are repeating that history right now, where we said we need to have digital rails as a public infrastructure on which market innovators, entrepreneurs, problem solvers can build solution where the infrastructure solves for access to the entire population and all that, and then contextual solutions start emerging on top of it, right? Today, somebody has said, I can attach a QR code to a tender coconut water seller, and therefore he has a mobile phone, he can get going. Now that difference is critical because we have been seeing the Googles and the Yahoos and the Amazons come up, but for a scale, when you talk about population scale, if India has to go from whatever was the percentage in payments to what we are doing, 10 billion, right? Which is like China, UK, US put together and more, I guess. So to do that, I think that paradigm shift would be necessary. And if you were to apply this in all walks of our life, access to credit, access to payments, access to goods and services, which is what I think ONDC as an effort is trying to do, is to solve for access requires infrastructure thinking, which is about solving for scale, working at scale, rather than scaling what works. We don't need 50 Amazons, we need one open infrastructure which rethinks what should be the Amazon that works for 1.4 billion people. I think that difference is essentially the difference between a digital solution or digitization to what is called as a DPI, a digital public infrastructure. And that infrastructure thinking is critical for scale, and I'm sure all the fintechs will understand your cost of customer acquisition, cost of servicing, cost of retention of the merchant wouldn't have been the numbers that you see today if there was no UPI and UPI collect that happens for any of the 800 million smartphones because of this infrastructure thinking. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. If I just stay with you for 30 more seconds, it's about this. I mean, what we are creating is information collateral. Right. When we're looking at the two sectors that DPI is looking to disrupt is small ticket credit and e-commerce. And so do you think in terms of access, but also in terms of information collateral really replacing physical collateral?
Yeah. Now, this is interesting, and I'll probably reverse the analogy this time. If you use more roads, the roads get broken and it needs repair. But funny part, with infrastructure, if you more use infrastructure as a byproduct, as an exhaust, it's not pollution, you get data. So India is becoming a data-rich country. You know, one of the things that, you know, Nandan keeps saying, on the first of every month, you get to see all the numbers, UPI numbers, GSTN collection numbers, all of that happening. India has become a real-time data economy, literally. And that data richness comes because infrastructure thinking has allowed us to generate data footprints which are not logged in some solutions. Unified, interoperable specifications, standards-based thinking led to creating this data exhaust or data emitting coming out. And that means India, unlike other economies, have a new form of capital called the digital capital. I have data that I can collateralize. I have data to solve for access. I have data to expand my business in many which ways. And to your question on credit and risk, the models will look different when I have a woman purchasing, if I have consumption data for a woman on groceries and others on ONDC, and I have my talk time data coming in, and I have credit proposals coming in, how do I all put them together? It's not that each of them are operating in silos. My digital capital is unlocked equal. And I think one of the most powerful protocols India has put together with account aggregator story with DEPA, I think that is going to put power in the hands of people, right? So I think this is a byproduct, a strategic high value byproduct that's coming out of an infrastructure thinking, I think is one of the India's unique story.
Thank you, and we're coming at the 5-minute mark, so I wanted to quickly go back to Pawan. Pawan, India is an assisted model country, right, when it comes to things. Is it going to change? What does it really mean? What can we do to really leverage this, this assisted piece? And especially in case of women, because ultimately, you know, they're the ones who...
So India actually, India has a lot of things, right? So people do stuff on their own and assisted, and you know, and assisted both either at a commercial kind of level or at home with their children or the other people. So there, it's various types. I think the key here is to move the needle on moving from assisted to doing a self transaction. We need to understand what are the levers there and what are the use cases that are emerging. So coming back to your view on insurance, we have technology today. One of the highest cost in insurance has been the collection of premiums. It's now free on UPI. What has the industry gone and done to use that? Can you do 1 rupee a day deductions? Of course you can. It's not being done. Why? In a similar way, how would insurance now be sold, underwriting be done at points of aggregation? Right? What kind of insurance? So the government tried accident insurance and life insurance, where all the numbers look great. I don't know the ratio of claims yet, but I'm sure it's decent. The key is, as you said, we need to change our mindset to think not with how can I deliver this, but what is needed. So if you take to a guy who's a rickshaw driver, he'd say, I can pay 1 rupee and 5 rupees a day on insurance, but I can't pay 500 rupees in one go. Now, if that is the problem statement, change the way we think, right? And therefore, is the process now as simple and straightforward that I can buy insurance online myself? The industry is today gone and created levers which say this rider, that rider, 500 like other riders. I think I'm literate in insurance. I fail. I completely fail to even read the alphabet in the insurance thing. What are we talking about? A poor people who has scarcity of bandwidth in terms of understanding all these things. We have to simplify stuff to use. And technology today allows us to simplify stuff, right? Today, if you look at UPI, such a clean, standard, simple, easy to understand way of transacting. What do we need to get there to do all the other transactions that we are able to do? So use cases, I think, are important. Meeting needs of people are important. Assisted is going to be, in a way, it's not going away. It will be there. Women will move ahead from being assisted on their own. And I'm not a seer, I can't see the crystal ball, but I'm telling you, we were recently in a remote village outside Varanasi, deep rural, hardly any roads. We saw a small hole-in-the-wall store run by a woman with 3 QR codes there. And my HDFC bank account worked. Because I scanned the QR code and I paid, right? And I'm the kind of a guy, if it doesn't work, I call the lip and say, hey, it's not working. And then he starts getting into a panic. But I'm saying it's reaching there. It's the confidence. If the woman now has the confidence, and she didn't even have a soundbox, right? So when I paid, and I told her it's been, it's credited into her account, she says, I know, it's okay, I know it works. That changes the level of confidence. So things have to work. Things have to be simple, straightforward for them to adopt it. And there are use of technology which allows us to do that today. So I'm saying assisted mode, in short, we will continue. The process of change will be faster. And we will make the leap individual by individual who will move from assisted to there. We will not see chunks of people saying, I'm going to stop this or tomorrow. So it's a process, it's a continuum, and we'll continue to have.
I think my big takeaway is the power of simplicity. But you said you're not a seer, but I mean, I would invite our panelists to be that, because what are you most excited about? What do you think we'll be speaking to 2-3 years from now? I'll start with you, Priyanka.
So I do think financial inclusion has 2 sides to it. One is for the underpenetrated segments, and we have always a lot to do there, and especially for the vulnerable communities. But I'm also thinking about the next 500 million, right, which is our millennials, our Gen Z, put together is 500 million people. And what are we going to do to help them do more with their money? How are we going to get them to not just be financially literate, but to be savvy enough to use their digital understanding and their financial independence in a way that they build for the future. And I think I'm excited about that space and how we can build, to do more with money.
That's actually wonderful, because they can be huge enablers, and to your point on assistant model as well. Shiva, what about you? What do you think? I mean, given this so many players that are there in the ecosystem, what do you think you're the most excited about? Well, you can't say the launch.
No, it's not about the launch. All I'll say is I think the dots are there. We're connecting it well, and we have a responsibility. We have to. We shouldn't be saying, as I think everyone here agrees to it, it's not about people coming to us. It's about us going back to the people, understanding the problem, and probably design, create, or probably improvise things in such a way that we give it to them in such a way that they can consume as is and can make their life better. And that's the ultimate goal. I think that's what excites me a lot.
Absolutely, yeah, that is quite exciting. And finally, we'll end with you, Mr. Joshi. What are you most excited about? But I'm going to make it more difficult for you, because you did the difficult job of opening very well. So, so in terms of what are you most excited about? But I would also love for you to bring in that element of trust when you're doing this at scale.
So, see, one thing is, as a wish list, we want a single-click service that sits in the future. No? But it has to be, with a great peril. So we have to ensure the grievances part also. Someone in the rural area earning only 5,000 rupees, and for him or her 1,000 rupees matter. So we want a quick resolution in a quick time. They can't afford to lose 1,000 rupees even for a day. So that is very much required. And then again is from product point of view, I would like to mention that we should use the multi-factor authentication depending upon the risks and the kind of product we are giving. Maybe only OTP-based auth is fine. Sometimes face authentication, only biometric authentication, finger-based authentication, iris-based authentication, or maybe a combination of these all authentication, or maybe on top of that you can have your own PIN also. Suppose it's a big ticket transaction, you require robust authentication. So security we have to give to the customer, right? That we have to ensure the complete security in terms of the multi-factor authentication. And just wait, the face authentication is going to disrupt the market, because now we are going to have a 1 billion smartphone maybe by 2026. Everyone will have the smartphone and with all the products on a single click, but we have to ensure security and the privacy. So that we have to ensure.
Thank you. On that note, we'll close the panel. It says timer expired, so I can't open it to, for questions, but our panelists are going to be around. So please feel free to ask the questions. Thank you again.
Thank you, Swati.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.